Tanya for the 15th of Tammuz refers the story. The Tzemach Tzedek, the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, his mother passed away at a very, very young age, and he was raised by his grandfather, the author of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, and he was always around the Alter Rebbe in his youth. In fact, even at the age of 4 or 5, he would walk around the Alter Rebbe's study and Alter Rebbe's house, wearing tefillin just like his grandfather, but instead of actual tefillin, he had potatoes, and he put string and he tied the potatoes around his head and around his arm, and he wanted to be just like his grandfather, and he would walk around in tefillin. And then people would notice that his tefillin straps would get stuck around the different places around the table, and the Alter Rebbe would bend down and undo it and untangle it in such a way that the Tzemach Tzedek's tefillin were back to the way that he wanted to be. One particular time, the Alter Rebbe said a very complicated Torah lesson on Al Shloisha Devarim Ha'olam Oimed, which is a Mishnah from Pirkei Avos, and it was very complicated. No one understood it. And they came to the Alter Rebbe and they asked the Alter Rebbe if the Alter Rebbe is able to repeat this over again. And the Alter Rebbe said yes, but the Alter Rebbe said I want there to only be 30 people in the room, and only the very senior Hasidim were able to join, and the Alter Rebbe was going to repeat it a few days later after Shacharis. One of the people who was invited to hear the Alter Rebbe say this Maamar for the second time was Rav Isaac of Hummel. And Isaac of Hummel at this time was a very, very young man. Later on, he was going to be one of the most senior Hasidim of the later Rebbeim, of the later Chabad Rebbes. But at this point, during the times of the Alter Rebbe, he was a very young man, and he had barely managed to to be able to go in. He was a genius Torah scholar, but it was a room filled with elderly men. And as he makes himself comfortable as one of the 30 people who were chosen to be in the room at the time, suddenly the Tzemach Tzedek comes into the room and starts pushing people aside so he could make his way to the front. And the Isaac Hummel was about to say something to the young boy. And just as he was about to, the Alter Rebbe turned to him, and the Alter Rebbe said, "Leave him be. He wants to listen. He is listening, and you will know that he's actually listening." Isaac Hummel had no way didn't know what to make of this statement, but of course he didn't say anything to the Tzemach Tzedek, to the young boy, and he let him move in, and he moved in. All the Chassidim were very curious about this statement, but no one really knew, no one understood what to do with the information. Decades went by, and the Alter Rebbe passed away, and his son, the Mittler Rebbe, Reb Dovber, became the next Rebbe, and when he passed away, 15 years later, there was a big group of Hasidim that were trying very hard to get his son-in-law and also his nephew, the Tzemach Tzedek, to become the third Rebbe of Chabad, and they tried extremely hard and they were very unsuccessful. And finally, they managed to convince the Tzemach Tzedek, and it was after a tremendous amount of persuasion. They finally agreed to let the Tzemach Tzedek. He agreed to become the next Rebbe. And the Tzemach Tzedek called the Chassidim, and in the Chabad style, the way to start off the Rebbeship is through a Maamar, and the Tzemach Tzedek started saying a Maamar, and the Maamar was Al Shloisha Devarim Ha'olam Oimed, on three things the world stand, and the Tzemach Tzedek started repeating word for word the exact Maamar that his grandfather had said decades earlier. For most of the people in the room, they didn't know what to make of it. It didn't seem so meaningful. But now Isaac of Hummel was an elderly man who had been present by that and couldn't believe it. And at some point, he thought to himself, now this is only a trick that a Rebbe could do. Because someone said had just become the Rebbe, and he realized that this was real. And suddenly, someone said stopped in the middle of the Maamar, and he turned to him and he said to him like this. He said, "Don't suspect me." He tells Isaac Hummel, "Don't suspect me of having things I don't have. But what can I do that my grandfather ordered me to repeat this Maamar?" And when the Maamar was over, everyone was all excited. They were dancing. It was very exciting. But then they went up to Isaac Hummel because they all wanted to know the story. What happened in the middle of the Maamar? And Isaac Hummel told them the story that had happened decades earlier. The Tanya so far is in Igeres HaTeshuvah. And we spoke about what halachically tshuva is, and we went through the details of what it is, and then later on the details of what it is not, In other words, it's not fasting. And we spoke about what place fasting does have in the process of tshuva. It's the gift we give after tshuva has actually been accomplished. And then, now in chapter 4, which we started 2 days ago, we spoke about, okay, what is tshuva spiritually speaking? According to Chassidus, what is tshuva? And we explained that tshuva means toshav hay, returning the hay. And there's a higher level of tshuva, and there's a lower level of tshuva. The higher level of tshuva represents adding the hay back into Hashem's name, the first hay in Hashem's name, and the lower level of tshuva is adding back the second hay back into Hashem's name. And then we spoke about the fact that in yesterday's Tanya, we say that the Jewish people are a portion of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The 4-letter name, Hashem blew it into the nostrils of Adam, into every person's soul. And then we spoke about at the very end of yesterday's Tanya the fact that everything in this world is created through the word of the name of Elohim, but the soul of a Jewish person is created through Yud Kei Vav Kei. And now, in today's Tanya, we're going to explain. Okay, we're saying that the soul comes from Yud Kei Vav Kei. How do you see that in the actual soul itself? How do we see in the soul that it comes from Yud Kei Vav Kei? And that's going to be today's discussion. Or via to explain, to understand this. It's known this that Eliyahu said in Tikkun Isaiah. Antu da apikas asa tikkunin. Vikarinon lahoin asa sefiron lan haga vahoin olmen sesimim v'chlo. You, Hashem, elicited 10 garments, which you call the 10 spheres, by which you conduct the concealed world in which you conduct the revealed world. And then the Eliyahu Navi goes through the spheres. An chakim v'lev chachmi yadia. You are wise, but not a understandable type of wisdom. Ant maven, you understand, but v'loy b'vini yadia, and not with a knowable understanding. And the Eliyahu Navi goes through all the spheres, explaining each sphere. Chachma, bin, das, chesed, gevurah, teves. All the different spheres, the 10 different levels. Chachma, bin, das, chesed, gevurah, teves, nesach, yisod, and malchus. This is something which comes from Zayah, and this is the idea that Hashem has inside himself these 10 garments, these 10 spheres. The whole hayud spheres nichlolos v'nirmoses b'shem havaya baruch. And here comes the punchline. All 10 of these spheres are all hidden and included and represented by the Yud Kei Vav Kei name of Hashem. So when we talk about the Yud Kei Vav Kei name of Hashem, we say this is the highest name of Hashem, and this is the all-powerful name of Hashem, and we're going to talk a lot more about the fact that everything in creation all comes from this name. The 10 spheres that we talk about are included in Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the obvious question is how, because there's only 4 letters, and yet there's 10 spheres. So Alter Rebbe is not going to break it down. That's going to be the remainder of today's Tanya, the second point of the Tanya. The Yud, the first letter of Hashem's 4-letter name, the Yud, represents, Yud is just a dot. There's no much of definition in the Yud. Yud is essentially just a dot. What does it represent? It represents Chachma. Chachma is that wisdom that's in a state of deep concealment. It hasn't yet been opened up. The wisdom is just still compacted. Yud, and if you look at the Yud carefully, it's a dot, but it also has a little poke, a thorn that goes upwards. And this little thorn at the top of the Yud represents Kesed. We're going to talk about it later on. It's going to be actually important in the discussion later on in a few chapters from now. But the Yud is Chachma. The Hey of Hashem's name, the second letter of Hashem's name, represents taking the Yud and stretching it wide and stretching it down. It represents Bina, where you have the Chachma flash of inspiration of wisdom, and then you expand a bit, you ask questions on it, you think deeply about it, you widen it and deepen it, and that represents Bina. That's the second process of the intellectual process. After a person has developed the thought, the person now wants to reveal that thought. The start of the process of revealing that thought and the continuation of that is the Vav and the Hey of Hashem's name. So we have the Yud and the Hey, which represent the intellectual process, and the Vav and the Hey, which represent the expression of that. And as you're going to see, the Vav is going to talk about the emotional part. Ki havav moiram shacham lamata. Vav literally looks like a line drawing from upwards to downwards. וגם המשך הזוי היא על ידי מינוס חסטי וטובה ושם ידוס והקדש ונכלוץ בדרך כלל במצווה 6 ובפוסק לך השם הגדולה וכולו עד לך השם המלאכה וכולו ולא יד בכלל. The Vav represents the 6 different emotional spectrum within the 10 spheres. You have Chachma Bina, which is the intellectual process. And then you have Chesed Gevur Teferes Netzach Hoyd and Yesoid, that represents the emotional. And the emotional also represented from the verse L'cha Hashem Agdula V'Gvura, etc., which is saying davening every single day. It's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, and those 6 levels are all included within that verse. Ki midas ba'chusa yisparech nikas b'shem dvar havaya, k'mo shikasa b'asher dvar melech shilton. So the hey represents speech. Speech is the giving over of the information. You have the intelligence, you have the emotional understand, the emotional injection of that, and then you have the speech, which is the actual transference. And this represents the final hey. Because the hey, why does the hey represent speech? Hey is the 5 different subdivisions of the mouth. The mouth has 5 different points where each letter comes from. For example, the throat, for example, produces the aleph, the ches, the hey, and the ayin. You can actually feel it coming from the throat. Another example, the lips itself. The lips will be the base and the pay. These letters literally are formulated by that section. There's 5 different zones within the mouth where different letters are formulated, and hey is 5. Another way that you see the hey represents speech. The hey also represents the purest of the sounds. Every sound, as it goes to that 5 different locations and it's then broken up, it started off as a hey, and then a bass, for example, is a hey but interrupted by the mouth, by the lips. A ches would be hey but interrupted by the throat. So the hey is a pure sound, like it's written, a light letter without any substance. That's the description of the hey. And even though, of course, Hashem doesn't have any corporeal form, and we're talking about the which letters have substance and which ones don't. So of course Hashem doesn't actually have any form of guf, and there's no any form of body, and there's no real difference within Hashem about the different letters Hashem uses in the speech of Hashem. Nonetheless, the Torah speaks in language of man, so we are able to get something out of this. And the fact that we talk about the speech of Hashem, which is 22 letters that are subdivided into 5, mean that the final letter, the final hey of Hashem's name, represents the actual speech element within the soul or the process of Hashem creating the world. In summary, what we're saying today, Tanya, 2 points. Number 1, Hashem's Yud Kei Vav Kei energy, which creates absolutely everything, has included within it the 10 spheres. And number 2, we gave a rundown of the 10 spheres. Chachma being the flash of inspiration, Bina being the expansion of that flash of inspiration, and then Chesed Gevurah Teferes Netzach Hoyd and Yesod representing the Vav, which is a drawing downwards and an expression outwards, and the hey being the actual speech of that. Thank you so much for joining the Tanya. Tanya Zelin Nishmas Vav Elias ben Yamin Alevi, Moshe Aaron Akoyim ben Yosef Reuven ben Emmanuel Aaron ben Avram, Esther Bas Moshe Mordechai Simcha Tzvi Bas Shani Rosie Eliel Moshe ben Avram, Sarah Miriam Bas Chaim ben Yamin, and Achayim Mushka Bas Shimon Avram and Fushim V'Yak ben Aaron ben Nasbatalat Kel Bas Chaim Moshe Bracham Moshe ben Esem Moshe Menachem ben Edel Leah Bas Yana Yosef ben Shalasan and Onas needs of Fushim successful the Jews around the world, especially the United States. Successful soldiers to defend the Jewish people and speedy coming Mashiach. Have a wonderful, very successful day. And thank you so much for joining.